Amazing. So today is, I think, number 4, yeah?
Hmm.
Welcome to Soul Purpose Conversation. I am here with Jan, who is a Soul Purpose Alchemy, and we're representing the Soul Purpose group that we have in the school platform. And we are here to engage in a meaningful conversation, spiritual conversation, to share what we are thinking about. Looking at the group that we facilitate, we're in a massive expansion mode. And as we build a group, we don't want to just build a group, community. People can come to share their stories, but something that is meaningful and something that is different. I don't know about you, Jan, but I'm a big fan of internal exploration, but also the idea of innovation excites me. Something that I don't see in the world and begin creating something unique and different. So for me, speaking about the group and pondering and examining things is a process of innovation for me. So that excites me. Jan has a fantastic topic to talk about today. So I'm going to have him kind of share a little bit, maybe what led you to want to talk about that, and then we can begin talking about it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, probably the best place to start is, um, well, with the T's and C's so that- of you don't have to believe what we believe. And, we're just having a discussion about spiritual stuff and as we perceive it to be. And so the topic today, you mentioned something now which sort of hijacked me for a second, but the top, I'll pull it all in together. I also love to go inward, but it's also very important for me to realize that, and I guess the best way to say it is, I don't go to the gym just so I can look good in the mirror. I become strong so I can better help those around me. And the spiritual sort of reps that we go through, the going inward, it's a waste if it's only done so that I can feel better, or that if I do it just for me, I sort of lose the point. But it's fine in the beginning. It's almost necessary in the beginning to focus a little bit on yourself, to understand yourself a bit better. But inevitably, what happened to me, the further in I got, was the more I wanted to share my story, share my pondering, share the things that I was working on spiritually, and all of that stuff. And so the topic for today is, when I first came into Yuki's energy, I found him by absolute chance, I guess I could say, maybe not chance, and came into his community for a workshop. And in that workshop, he said some stuff that my traumatized personality would have probably left the call because of, but because of where, it's not what he said, it's how he said it that was important. And how he said it, the best way I can describe it was that his ego wasn't talking to my ego. It was not an ego affair whatsoever. His soul was talking through my pain to my soul and saying some pretty hard truths that landed almost immediately. And I had a pretty a good sort of expansion, little mini expansion. And yeah, so that's the topic. Me and Yuki have been sort of talking about this back and forth here and there in our communications. And I know that Yuki is very passionate about, singers and those type of performers. And so I wanted to ask him, what if we identify Like, how do I speak from the soul? How do I let the soul do the talking? Yeah, I like that language. How do I let the soul do the talking? And through our communications, we got to a point where it's like in those moments where nothing else matters, you know, where you're on stage or you're presenting something or those type of places. If you feel safe enough to let the soul do the talking, it's quite a magical sort of experience for those around you.
My turn, yeah. You just asked your question. So your question is, how do we let the soul do the talking?
Yes.
I don't think the soul's talking is only speaking in words.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this urge to go back to talk about your experience of mini expansion in the workshop that you attended first, but let me just kind of answer your question first. So, gosh, how far back should I go? I learn how to let the soul talk through me through my experience of dance, being on the stage. So I practiced dance for quite some times. I was in Tokyo. And you know, when we do the rehearsal, right? You're at the studio and then you are in front of the mirror and I wasn't a solo dancer, so I had a group of people who was dancing with. There's a choreography that we create or I was given and begin practicing. You begin practicing using count without music first, right? And then after that, the movement, the tonality of the movement and the song and the beat and music, and you begin integrating, right? Integrating what the song tells you and how you express yourself. And then in that, you begin actually visualizing. I'm not in the studio anymore, right? I'm looking at myself through the mirror because I'm in the studio. But then when you practice, you're actually visualizing where you're dancing at, the end goal. And then you are immersing yourself being on the stage, dancing for the audience. So that was the practice. Yeah. Something about something about that practice that when you actually begin performing on the date of the actual performance day and having the audience versus rehearsing, visualizing the audience, something about that I learned how to turn the switch on, right? And it's very interesting. You're saying how? I don't know, right? I don't know. But then I have this palpable feeling that I'm right here. This is the time, it's not later, right? This is the exact moment that I'm supposed to be generating that power to express myself in this very moment. And then you see the audience, you see the setting, and you see the whole thing prepare. You cannot go back. You know what I mean? You cannot go back. This is the moment that I'm supposed to be doing. It's not later or tomorrow. Then you actually make a decision. This is the thing. Make a decision. I'm gonna turn my switch on, and I actually flip the frequency. I mean, now I'm using that language. I didn't know that language back then. I was like early 20s or something, right? But somehow I learned how to do it. Yeah. So letting the soul to speak for me started with this idea of desiring to perform the best that I can in that space, and then learning to turn the internal switch on to become somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very interesting. You can say that like a peak performance moment for the athletes, or getting into the zone or even flow state. You
Mm-hmm.
actually choose to go there through your mental decision, and you begin moving the body that way. So you change your identity instantly, right? Collapse in time. You're not taking time and then waiting for the gestation period. You actually become so there. And then I think the best way to describe is to turn the switch on. I learned how to turn that switch on. Now, fast forward, the expression has changed from dance to actually conducting, presentation and all that. I have
Mhm.
never studied public speaking. I have never been to any of Toastmaster. I say a lot of the stuff and I don't care. You know what I mean? Um, like that, right? So because I know that a lot of people who practice speech is sensitive to that.
Yeah.
For me, that's not what I get drawn to, right?
Mhm.
The way that people are speaking from the place that they're coming from. And I think I actually took that turning the switch on experience from dance, and then I'm able to do that when I am in the live training or presentation,
Mm.
right? So it's a different letting the soul to do the talk, letting the that's how you describe it. I think the way that I feel what I'm doing is I'm allowing the infinite God, something bigger than me, to channel through me. And the interesting thing, Jan, I don't know. Sometimes I get surprised with what I say myself.
Mhm.
So when I say it, I said, "Who said that? Did I just say that?" I think I said. I mean, I sometimes go back to my recording, and there's no doubt. When I say that, there's no doubt that I don't know where that information comes from, but I just said it, and it almost like something bigger than me use my individual expression to voice to channel through me so that information gets delivered to somebody else.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, so do you ever remember being scared when you were on stage?
Scare.
And does
Like
being
a nervous.
scared interfere with flipping the switch, as you say?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's just like anything else, right? Like you just get used to it. Like I think I was scared wasn't the term. I think there was a moment where at the first few years I was nervous, right?
Hmm.
And I was sort of in the process of forming my way, right?
Hmm.
And it's interesting because there was a point, even teaching exercise Pilates, that when you start doing and immerse yourself in a certain identity, you will start finding your style,
Hmm.
your unique way of delivering thing. And then I was able to get there pretty quickly in dance. So what that means is that if I'm giving a choreography, I had a way to dance through, making it my voice, my style.
Mm.
Yeah. And then in that process, not only how I felt, but there was a recognition from the outside, right? Then that also kind of feeds into form your identity. And so, yes, to answer your question, was I scared? At the beginning, there was a time where I wasn't feeling certain or confident enough in the way that I was doing. And in those times, Jan, it wasn't it wasn't about not being able to turn the switch on. That option wasn't available for me
Interesting. What
because
does that mean?
that means that because I was getting caught with something else,
Yeah.
right? So once you have that voice and that style, you you kind of become comfortable in your own skin, in your own expression. Then
Yeah.
you have a space to tune into something different. So you're not getting caught with how people are thinking about me
Mm-hmm.
something,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? I'm focusing on what am I focusing on? I'm focusing on expression. I'm
Yeah, that's what I
focusing
was
on
about to say.
yeah. I'm focusing on expression and then the way in which I can express and also being in the moment, being in the experience.
Mm,
And then you kind of step into that.
mm, mm,
And I don't want to say that's addictive, but it was.
mm. Interesting.
Yeah.
I know it. I wouldn't say that I can flip a switch. I'm probably of like more, my more present self. In a way, I'm flipping a switch, but also in some ways, when I try to, if we stick with this language, try to flip the switch, then I end up still playing a character. It's not the spirit talking through me, but the place where I first experienced this was in like a 12-step fellowship, and there you regularly share your yearly sort of birthdays around sobriety or whatever the fellowship is, and I used to spend like the whole week before trying to think about what I was going to say and what knowledge I was going to drop and what message I want to carry and my sort of mentor sponsor at the time said to me, it's like, don't obsess about it, don't think about it, don't, just sit down in the chair, make a little prayer, and just let the spirit talk through you. And 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 inevitably, even if you talk for long enough in that type of space with that level of vulnerability, inevitably the shoulders sort of soften, the ego sort of falls away, and everything that gets said is, you will afterwards feel to yourself like, where did that even come from? Where did I wasn't planning on saying that, or that type of thing. And then since, being 12 years into these spaces, I've seen many of these type of shares, and people will come in and they're like, oh well, they're very nervous, and they're like, I hope that you guys get something from this, and they're all meek, and then they start to talk, and it's not quite finding its footing, and then next thing you know, they just soften, and it's just like, it just comes through so beautifully. And then at the end, they like look around the room and realize they're talking to like 40 people, and they go, ooh, and then they're like, I hope that was okay, guys. The ego comes back and goes, I hope that was a, and I always left thinking to myself, like, what a beautiful, beautiful share, because you could not have like, if you were, okay, cool. Today, point number one, guys, I want to talk about this. Point number two, I want to, like, it just it doesn't have the same essence, it doesn't have the same experience. It's interesting. But if we sort of just zoom back to, you were saying like, high performance athletes and singers, and it's interesting that like when you watch musicians, that whole experience can be quite spiritual.
Speaking of singers, though, I mean, people have different style and types of expression. In I have seen artists who project to reach all the audience versus artists who let audience drawn towards them,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
So you don't need to. You kind of get mesmerized by the world that that person is creating, and you get
Mm.
pulled into that person's world instead of the artist coming towards you with the
Mm.
expression. It's a different sort of feel to it.
Are you saying that they both, like, emoting the same frequency? They both, the spirit is talking. It's just two different ways. Or are you saying the one is an ego expression and the other one is a more, the language is going to fail us with this, but
Yeah.
is the soul is doing the talking? Is that what you're saying?
I think in this context, I meant that both are soul talk
Okay.
in a different way of. expressing.
Mhm.
But I think,
I guess there's many ways probably.
yeah,
Mm.
it's not like a black or white.
Mm.
It's a combination. And also, yeah, but I get what you mean though, because there was somebody who came to my workshop, not the one that you took first. I can't remember the one that you took first. Something that I did in
Mm.
October. It was something before the one that I did in the topic of gift. I can't remember the name of it.
No, it was before the gift one, I think. The
Yeah,
one before that. Yeah.
yeah, I can't remember the title. Anyway, somebody who came to the January one that I did, and I think she was surprised that the way that I was, facilitating the event was very different from how most people are doing, where they have this sort of process and going, presenting and maybe slides and all that. But then I think sometimes when I begin speaking my truth, and when I speak my truth, and when I'm speaking, I'm very aware that letting something flowing to me, there is a level of conviction that draws people into those words. And then
Mm.
that creates and shapes a completely different experience for people. And then
Mhm.
that person is somebody who actually coordinate events and bring speakers together. And then I remember her mentioning that, wow, this is a completely different experience, whatever that you're doing. So
Mm.
I totally get though what you mean by performance versus
Expression.
expression. Yeah,
Mm.
like real, authentic expression. It's kind of tricky, right? Because in the marketing space, authenticity is becoming one of the marketing hacks,
Yeah.
almost, right? Um, but I don't think authenticity is authenticity has become a strategy for a lot of people. I don't think it's I don't think you can make it strategy when you're actually being fully authentic about it, right? You just are. So I think the mind wants to categorize and make it as a bullet point, right? So yeah.
So, okay, one more question there. I know the big energy that you're in at the moment is the Soulpreneur course that you're putting out. I mean, how does this how would this topic benefit anybody really? Um, I know for me, it's as I said, this is something that I really spend a lot of time playing around with because I think it's fascinating. If we just quickly go back to what happened to me, uh, because we've spoken a little bit about artists and high performance athletes and people giving presentations and stuff, but from that end, but what I guess a hallmark of this is how the person on the receiving end is left feeling. And again, like if I'm in those 12-step fellowships, it's just amazing how you feel after someone is expressed in that way. And it's really regardless of what they say or what their story is. That's the interesting thing. But in that particular moment, for me, when I was in that workshop, we were talking about the what's the point of contrast, which is like some language of yours around um, the necessity, like in order to feel good, bad needs to exist, and all of that stuff, and we got into the topic of perceptions. That's actually what it was, and that trauma is ultimately actually a perception as well. It's life experiences that I have internalized as traumatic, and they can be horrific for sure. It's not to take away anyone's pain or horror or anything like that, but But when you said your trauma is just a perception, my ego is screaming like, run away from this. This is gaslighting, like horror, like how dare he say that? How dare he touch address my trauma in that way? You need to validate my trauma. That's what the ego wants. But instead you were saying like, life is just a sequence of perceptions really. And you can, and it's you didn't, whatever you said, how it landed for me, opened me up, and I'm incredibly grateful. Sorry, I think I've lost what the question is here, but
I have something that I want to say.
okay, please.
So when we say trauma is your perception, just like you said, the intention is to not really to minimize anybody's experience, right? But let me give you an example. There's somebody named, I think his name is Matthew Sanford. He wrote a book called Waking. He got chest down paralyzed through car accident at the age of 13. And from there, he was on a wheelchair. But because of that, he decided to become a younger yoga teacher and begin teaching all the people who are in a wheelchair yoga. Right? So what does that tell us? It was a trauma, physical trauma. It was an incident, and he actually turned his pain into his story and embrace it to serve the world. And as much as most people cannot or don't want to hear that the journey of the soul has a meaning when it's painful, it is our free will, our individual responsibility to begin choosing to embrace whatever the pain that we have had. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened to us. Right? And I think it is not our responsibility when we are not consciously aware to get exposed to all the challenges that we have been exposed to, although there's a path of the soul. But then now that we are adults and we are aware of, it is our responsibility to decide how we choose to see that. That is the whole point. Because if we let that whatever that we perceive as a trauma to overpower us, we are actually not reconciling that experience to turn that into a gift, and nobody else outside of us can turn that into that but only ourselves. Yeah. Now, what I want to be mindful with this conversation, because I don't know who is watching, who is listening, and what kind of experience people have, right? There is a degree in that, right? Like, for instance, when somebody have a sip of wine, that person might be tipsy. If the person has 2 glasses of wine, you might start feeling better. 3, now you might feel like you are not able to think. 10, now you might get wasted, right? So that pain and the experience has degrees in it. And I think there are different levels of ways to meet, to help people facilitate, to guide into begin owning that experience. So I'm not saying, everybody needs to see this way right away. There needs to be a time and the process through which to prepare the person to begin seeing. So, right, somebody who is wasted, we need to help the person carry a little bit, right? You're not going to begin standing up and walking. So
I
I
love
think,
that analogy.
yeah. So, the stress and the trauma, all those stuff that we talk about has degrees in the intensity. And each person needs to be taken care of. But then eventually where we want to get to is to begin exercising, seeing that from the lens of embracing. And then, because I had this experience, and it's a natural thing, right? When somebody has gone through something, it's a natural thing to turn that into, let's say, profession or something that they can contribute to, because it's meaningful for them. So when we are able to begin embracing that, we can create meaning in our life. And then when you
Mm.
start turning that into a meaning into our life, you're no longer being overpowered by it. Now you are actually, you are the, the sailor, and
Mm.
you're sailing your path to actually touch others, right? So
Yeah. To carry the message. It's yeah. The the sailor. I love that. Oh gosh, I forgot what I was going to say now. That sailor was beautiful. Um, oh yes, and then what happens inevitably with this perspective change is that anything that happens in the future, becomes juice. It's like oh wow, there's some contrast. There's something unpleasant is happening. And often I've seen say to people in the community, like, oh, how wonderful, when something, not, I mean, obviously you wouldn't say that if somebody, some sort of accident happened, but when, there's some uncomfortable feedback from the universe, then it's like, oh, how wonderful, because there's opportunity there again.
you know what? I also am learning that I need to be a little bit careful, because I'm
No,
saying,
please don't.
no, I'm saying this because I met meaning that, I interacted with somebody outside of the community who I thought would be open to this perspective because of the background that I know where this person comes from, and then completely I trigger that person.
Uh,
Yes. Yeah.
mm, mm. That sort of just, I know, that sort of opens the door for another aspect of this conversation, actually, which is, I think I asked you once, how to let the soul do the talking. I guess I asked it in a different way, under the context of when you are working with somebody or talking to someone, that's in a lot of pain. How do you carry the message of, without triggering them, or hurting them further or whatever? How do you carry the message of, life is happening for me, not to me, or the soul is on a journey, and pain is part of the waking up, or whatever language, there's many spiritual teachings around this concept, but how do you carry that message, without, you asked me, you said, do you empathize with these people? I think you said, do you and I said, of course, because I thought that's what you're supposed to do. And you said, why? Like, you're validating the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me explain a little bit, because this is an important topic.
Yes.
So when somebody is having an emotion, experiencing an emotion based on the story of the wound that they have lived, and let's say, for instance, right, this, let's say 10 people are in the room, and one person start crying, because, and then sharing how horrible her life is or has been based on whatever that happened. Yeah. It's a natural tendency for all humans who wants to touch that person, and then, carefully protect that person, to calm down and to give love to them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think there's gonna be people who still, if I say what I'm going to say, get triggered. So get ready, right? I don't, because if the person is feeling emotional negatively based on the false story of who he thinks they are, I'm feeding energy to the ego and the survival mind in helping the person to feel who they are not. It's not serving them, right? So my goal is to speak through that pain and wounds and speak to that light behind. Now, there's gonna be this is a case by case though, yeah, right? Depending on where the person is, just like the person who I just triggered, I didn't do anything to that in that context, right? I didn't try to do anything to it because I felt like the frequency that we were in was so different. And whatever that I say, and I don't know the context, whatever that I'm gonna say, I'm not going to help this person. And I decided completely when I saw the, conversation coming back, I'm letting this go. Yeah. Sometimes I do that, right? It wasn't a context that was sort of like a conversational. It was a text message. Yeah. Now, you ask me how to help the person, how to let the soul speak so the person can realize. I don't talk about it. I don't talk about the pain. I ask, and depending on the context, right? If the person is coming to me to get help, or if the person is just a random person, it's really case by case based on the context. But one thing that I have in mind in this sort of situation is to ask for what the person desires, right? Because sometimes asking that question enable the person to realize that they might be focusing on the wrong thing. And by asking what the person desire, that might help the person realize I'm not to forget about the desire. By asking the desire, and then the person realizing that focusing on the pain enable the person that I'm not actually focusing on the thing to get out of that, because 100% of the time if somebody's in pain, the desire is to get out of pain, right? I don't think the person has a desire to stay in pain deeper, right? The person wants to get out of the pain. Who wants to be in pain? Right? But then sometimes when people are in the loop and the pattern and the rhythm of focusing on that, they are forgetting what is it that they actually want. But that loop of the identities keeps spinning on its own without them realizing that that's what they're doing. So, but to speak of and about the desire, so we can begin bringing the light little by little, because light lives at the end of that, direction of the desire.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think this was our best talk so far.
Really? I actually really enjoy. This is. I think we can go with this though. You select the topic, and
Okay.
then you can begin studying and then marinating, and I can sort of answer any questions, because I think I like the way that you're choosing the topic that is a little bit more subtle, right? Subtle and more context based instead of something specific and talking about, the bullet point. But I think that's how you operate. That you begin looking at, okay, how is this working? Why is this happening?
That's exactly how I operate. And
Yeah.
getting to pick your brain about it is an absolute gift. So I'm down for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think the way that you're choosing the topic based on your perspective and then constructing this conversation that way will help people uh, to make them think about a little bit.
Yeah.
That's how I feel
Yeah.
it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Beautiful.
Do you have any final comments?
No, I think that was a good, yeah.
Okay, great. Um, if anybody wants to join the, Soul Purpose group, I'm gonna post a link below. So, we are wanting to see many soul-led entrepreneurs, or also soul-led enthusiasts. That's another language, right? To be a part of this group, because I think the more we can grow with people who are seeking and people who resonate with this idea, we can create something very, very special. So if you feel resonating with all these topics, and if this is making you curious about what's inside of the group, you can check the link to join. And then we're here to welcome you, to help you actually shift from any wound or anything that's holding you back, to allow and help you to wear the essence lens, which is
Mhm.
the lens of the essence who you are, to embody the essence self, which is the one and the only self that you're here to live. And eventually, for you to identify yourself as the essence energy flowing to and through you. So,
And to express
to
whatever it
express.
is that you need to express.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you, Jan. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And then we'll
Thank
see
you,
you
Yuki.
next week on the next episode number 5.